The mall stretched out before Meghan Markle like a red carpet beckoning her forward. Massive crowds had turned out to line the streets, eagerly awaiting the annual Trooping the Color parade to celebrate the Queen's official birthday. Meghan smoothed the folds of her navy blue dress, taking a steadying breath. This was her first attendance at the iconic event since officially rejoining the working royals after the tumultuous years of Megxit. She knew all eyes would be intensely scrutinizing her every move. Harry gave her hand an encouraging squeeze, drawing her attention to him. "Ready for this, love?" She managed a tight smile and a nod. Truthfully, her stomach was an endless gurgling pit of nerves. But this deliberate show of solidarity with the royal family was crucial after so much strife and hurt feelings. They began making their way towards the seated dais where the other royals were already gathered. Meghan kept her chin high, focusing straight ahead as camera shutters rapid-fired all around them. As they approached, Meghan's gaze landed on her sister-in-law Catherine, the Princess of Wales. The two women's relationship had been courteous but unmistakably frosty in recent years. Catherine offered a polite nod of acknowledgement before turning away. Just then, a disruptive commotion broke out from the crowds. Meghan startled, instinctively clutching Harry's arm, as her head whipped around towards the noise. It seemed to be coming from a cluster of protesters holding aloft signs denouncing her in Harry's very presence. "Shame on Suffolk Spares," one placard proclaimed crudely. Another read, "No more Markle monologues," with a crude cartoon rendering of Meghan covering her mouth. "Just ignore them," Harry muttered tersely under his breath. "They crave the attention." Meghan did her best to steady her nerves, taking his lead and continuing forward even as the jeers and insults grew louder. They were almost to the dais steps when disaster struck. With a deafening roar, one of the protesters seemed to break through the security barricades up ahead. The next few moments became a blur of commotion and shouting as the lone figure raced towards the dais waving a large sign above their head. Guards rushed to subdue the disruption while others herded the remaining royals away from potential danger. In the chaos, Meghan felt herself roughly shoved aside as Harry was pulled in the opposite direction. She stumbled, catching herself just before tumbling gracelessly to the ground. When she righted herself, it was to find Catherine's ice-blue eyes piercing directly into hers. "You are not needed here," the Princess of Wales hissed in a tone of barely veiled disdain. Meghan gaped at her, stunned into silence both by the words and the venom which tinged them. Had Catherine actually just blamed her for potentially inciting the unrest from the protesters? Before she could formulate a response, an iron grip closed around her elbow, yanking her backwards. She was promptly herded away from the dais while security strained to restore order and get the parade restarted. Relegated to a strictly quarantined holding zone, Meghan fumed in outraged disbelief at how quickly she'd been scapegoated and dismissed. This was supposed to be a proud, unifying moment for the royals, for her family. Of course she understood the need for security precautions. But Catherine's vicious implications stung in a way Meghan hadn't been prepared for. After an extended delay while the unruly crowds were brought under control, the parade finally commenced without Meghan or Harry present for the festivities. They could only watch from the holding room monitor as their family appeared in full ceremonial regalia for the global audience. Meghan longed to be out there with them, with Kate, William, Charles, the children. To present a united front for the world to see. Instead, she burned with humiliation at the undisguised contempt Catherine had leveled at her mere existence. It rendered all her efforts at rapprochement utterly meaningless. Unaware of the confrontation his wife had endured, Harry beamed with pride as the regal procession unfolded before them on the monitor. As the members of the royal family began ascending the dais, he turned to Meghan with a hopeful gaze. "See? All as it should be. Isn't it wonderful?" But as Meghan studied the stiff, cool expressions worn by the likes of Catherine and Camilla, a sick realization congealed in her gut. This deliberate separation, this willful ostracization, was no mere security fluke. It was a calculated rebuke, designed to deliver a brutal message. "You are not wanted here." The words swirled in Meghan's mind like a poisonous recrimination. She looked at the man she loved, still beaming ear to ear, and felt an overwhelming surge of protectiveness mixed with impotent rage. She longed to shield Harry from the scornful truth that this, their former family embracing the traditions he adored while utterly shutting them out, was the cruel new reality they faced. When it was all finally over, Meghan could scarcely meet Harry's curious, questioning eyes. She knew she should confide in him, as partners and equals were meant to do. But for tonight at least, she wanted to preserve his innocence, and her own fragile dignity. There would be other chances to make amends with the royals, or perhaps finally admit permanent defeat. Catherine's vicious words echoing through her mind, Meghan silently followed her husband away from the celebration she was now cruelly barred from sharing in as anything more than a scorned, unwanted outsider. For she was no longer seen as a welcome addition to the royal fold, but a cancerous presence to be quarantined at all costs. The very notion of being needed for the family's centerpiece events was now deemed too ludicrous to entertain. As their motorcycle escort sped them away from the palace grounds, Meghan stared sightlessly at the grand edifice rapidly shrinking in the side mirror. She tasted the bitter truth: this had been their hubris-laced attempt to have it all and be embraced wholeheartedly once more. But that fantasy was well and truly shattered now by the chilling reality of Catherine's cruel dismissal. Even amongst the most hallowed of royal traditions, Meghan's presence was no longer required nor desired. The message had been brazenly delivered in word and deed. It would forever sting her like a slap no courtly decorum could erase. There was no returning from the outer cold once you'd been ostracized. No veil of civility could conceal how utterly unwanted and superfluous they'd both become to the lofty institution they'd once represented. With a heavy heart, Meghan closed her eyes against the harsh finality of it. As the miles fell away and the cheers faded to silence, she clung to Harry with a white-knuckled grip of grim resignation. They were well and truly alone now.